thinketh. Forward. This little volume, the result, meditation and experience, is not intended as an exhaustive treatise on the much written upon subject, the power of thought. It is suggestive rather than explanatory, its object being to stimulate men and women to the discovery and perception of the truth that they themselves are the maker of themselves, by virtue of thought which they choose and encourage, that mind is the master weaver, both of the inner garment of character, the outer garment of circumstance, and that, as they may have hitherto woven in ignorance and pain, they may now weave in enlightenment and happiness. Thought and character, the aphorism. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not only embraces the whole of a man's being, but is so comprehensive as to reach out every condition and circumstance of his life. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being in the complete sum of all his thoughts. As the plant springs and could not be without the seed, so every act of a man springs from the hidden seed of thought, and could not have appeared without them. This applies equally to those acts called spontaneous and unpremeditated, as to those which are deliberately executed. Act is this blossom of the thought, and joy and suffering are its fruits. Thus does a man garner in the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. Thought is the mind, path made us. What we are by thought, both wrought and built. If a man's mind hath evil thoughts, pain comes on him as it comes the wheel. The ox behind. If one endure in purity of thought, joy follows him as his own shadow. Sure. Man is growth by law, and not the creation by artifice. And cause and effect is absolute and undeviating in the hidden realm of thought, as in the world of visible and material things. A noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance, but the sanitary result of continued effort in the right thinking, the effect of long cherished association with godlike thoughts. An ignoble and bestial character, by the same process, is the result of the continued harboring of groveling thoughts. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Between those two extremes are all the grades of character, and man is their maker and master. training to the soul, which have been restored and brought to light. This age, none is more gladdening or fruitful, divine promise, confidence than this, that man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of conditioned environment, destiny. As a being of power, intelligence, and love, and the lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation, and contains within himself that transforming and regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. Man is always the master, even in his weaker and most abundant state, but in his weakness and degradation, he is the foolish master of misgovernance his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and to search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, he then becomes the wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issues. Such is the conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought, which discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis, and experience. Only by much searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained, and man can find every truth connected with his being if he will dig deep into the mine of his soul, and that he is the maker of his character, the molder of his life, and the builder of his destiny. He may unerringly prove, if he will watch, control, and alter his thoughts, their effects upon himself, upon others, and upon his life and circumstance, linking cause and effect. By patient practice and investigations in utilizing his every experience, even to the most trivial everyday occurrence, as a means of obtaining that knowledge of himself which is understanding, wisdom, power. In this direction, as in no other, is the law, absolute, that he that thinketh, findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. For only by patience, practice, and ceaseless opportunity can a man enter the door of the temple of knowledge. Effect of thought on circumstance. Man's mind may be linked to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds, and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless and impure thoughts, and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of the right, useful and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstance, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstance at every given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are immediately connected with some vital thought element within himself that, for the time being, they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there, and in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of the law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony within their surroundings as of those who are contented within. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is, and that he may learn, that he may grow, and as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is a creative power, and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being, out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. That circumstance grow out of thought, every man knows, who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification, for he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstance has been the exact ratio of his altered mental condition. So true is that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. The soul attracts that which is secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires. Circumstance are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every tapped seed, sown or allowed to fall into the mind, and to take root there, produces its own blossoming mind. Sooner or later to act, and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts, bad fruit. outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss. Following the most desires, aspirations, thoughts by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will-o-wisp of impure imaginings, or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor. A man at last arrives at the fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of his life. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtains. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure mind man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed with gathered power. Circumstance does not make the man. It reveals himself. To himself. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attendant suffering apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness. Without the continued cultivation of virtues, aspirations, and man, therefore, as the lord and master of thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and the author of environment. Even at birth the soul comes to its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage it attracts those combinations of conditions which will reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. Men do not detect that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our very self. Only himself places man. Thought and action are the gallows of fate, the prison being base. They are also the angels of freedom. They liberate, being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with the thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, what then is the remaining of fighting against circumstances? It means that the man continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take the form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor, and thus calls aloud for remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstance, but are unwilling man who does not shrink from self-signification can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true in earthly as of heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he would realize a strong and well-poisoned life. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious, and his surroundings and home comfort should be improved. Yet all the time he shrinks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles which are the base of true prosperity. And it's not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but it's actually attracting to himself his steer deeper wretchedness by dwelling and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. He is the rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as the result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of his money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health, because he has not yet learned the first principle of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage, and, in the hope of making larger profits, reduces the wages of his workpeople. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity. And when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. I have introduced these three cases merely as illustrative of the truth that man is the causer, thought nearly always unconsciously of the circumstance, and that, while aiming at a good end, he continues frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such case could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely. But this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he resolves, trace the action of the laws and thoughts in his own mind and life. Until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are complicated, though it's so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspect of his life alone. A man may be honest in a certain direction, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth, but the conclusion usually formed that the merits because of his particular honesty, and that the other prosper because of his particular dishonesty, is the result of a superficial judgment which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man is almost entirely virtuous. In the light of a deeper knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have some admirable virtues, which the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious vices, which are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings up on himself the sufferings which his vices produces. The dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to a human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind, and washed every sinful stain from his soul, can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not his bad qualities, and not the way, yet long before he has reached that supreme perfection. He will have found, working in his mind and life, the great law which is absolutely just, which cannot, therefore, give good for evil, evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all his past experience, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self.